Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Gregg. I'm a nurse practitioner at GI Associates in Flowood, Mississippi. I've been working with patients with liver disease here for 18 years. I'm a part of the GHAPP MASLD community network and happy to be a part of this. With a growing incidence of MASLD, not only in the U.S. but worldwide, our goal is to educate providers in the community on MASLD and MASH so that we can effectively diagnose, risk stratify, and manage this growing disease. The MASLD Community Network website is full of information on this topic, and I hope you will check that out when you have a chance. So I'll be talking to you today about practical nutrition strategies in MASLD and MASH and how to tailor some of these recommendations. So let's jump right in. So MASLD and MASH are now the leading causes of chronic liver disease globally, and this is tightly linked to obesity, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. So lifestyle modification, particularly weight loss and diet, are the cornerstones of treatment. But just telling patients to go and lose weight fails, and I have learned this the hard way. So we really need to try to guide patients with specific evidence-based and culturally sensitive dietary strategies that are realistic and sustainable. So let's look at some of the evidence-based dietary patterns for MASH management. So Mediterranean diet actually has the most robust data for MASH. This type of diet emphasizes extra virgin olive oil, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, whole grains, and fish. Evidence shows that Mediterranean diet reduces liver fat, independent of weight loss. It improves insulin sensitivity, and it also decreases inflammation. This is typically the most recommended diet for MASLD, and for good reason. Another diet that we can recommend is the DASH diet. And this diet is particularly recommended in those with hypertension. So evidence shows that DASH diet can improve liver fat, liver enzymes, and metabolic risk factors. This diet focuses on heart-healthy foods, fruits, vegetables, low-fat dairy, and reduced sodium. The third diet is the low-carb or moderate-carb diet. Low-carb diet restricts carbs to no more than around 25-26% of total calories, and moderate-carb diet restricts carbs to approximately 45% of the calories. These diets can improve glycemic index control and reduce hepatic steatosis. Intermittent fasting, for those who don't mind skipping meals, may be a good option as well. Various forms of intermittent fasting include the 16-8, the 14-10, and the 1 meal a day. 2022 meta-analysis showed that various forms of intermittent fasting led to a 3 to 7% weight loss, improved steatosis, insulin resistance, and ALT. I typically like to encourage whole foods during the eating window. Another diet that we can recommend is plant-based diets for those who prefer a plant-based diet. These diets are rich in fiber and phytonutrients and low in saturated fat. The benefit to this diet does lie in the quality of the food, so focusing on whole foods instead of refined processed foods. So in general, with all of the above diets, emphasis again is on whole foods, so foods that nature made. We should encourage sustainable, nutrient-dense eating patterns rather than short-term restrictive diets. When we talk about diet, we also want to try to tailor these recommendations to consider their cultural preferences and socioeconomic factors. We should collaborate with patients to try to adapt their core principles of the Mediterranean-style diet into their culture if possible. So examples of this may be in Latin diet, use olive oil instead of lard or butter, promote the use of lentils, chickpeas, and black beans, use whole grain rice instead of refined or instant rice. In Asian meals, some of the same principles, choose whole grains over refined, use herbs and spices instead of sauces and MSG. Replace bubble tea with green tea or herbal tea. So we need to try to respect traditional eating habits. Maybe recommend decreasing the amount of the unhealthy food that they're eating and focus more or incorporate more vegetables and protein into that diet. We could also recommend modifying their preparation methods. So instead of frying, maybe they could consider grilling, baking, or steaming the food. In regards to socioeconomic and access barriers, we can recommend affordable substitutions. We could recommend possibly canned and frozen vegetables instead of fresh. We can teach them to rinse the canned vegetables. We can ask them to try to purchase bulk whole grains and then use legumes as protein sources. We can also connect patients with community food programs such as Meals on Wheels, farmers markets, and then also there are some church-based food programs. We should also consider their comorbid conditions when making recommendations. So, such as type 2 diabetes, we can encourage them to limit the refined carbohydrates, focus on low glycemic, fiber-rich foods. Chronic kidney disease, we need to ask them to moderate their protein intake, but of course, still get some protein in. Avoid excess sodium. Consider renal-specific dietitian input if that's available. Hyperlipidemia, focus on mono and polyunsaturated fats instead of saturated fats. Decrease the amount of red meat that they're consuming. Encourage fiber. Encourage omega-3 sources such as fatty fish, salmon and mackerel, and then also flaxseed. We should also address the intake of liquid calories and processed food. So sugary beverages are a major source of fructose, which promotes hepatic fat accumulation and inflammation. These also add extra calories that are unnecessary. Sugary beverages, of course, include sodas, sweet tea, energy drinks, and fruit juices. Patients, when I counsel them, tend to not understand that fruit juices are unhealthy or can be unhealthy. So this is often a surprise for them. We can recommend that drinking regular water, sparkling water, unsweetened tea, or coffee instead of sodas. We can encourage the patient to check labels for hidden sugars, including high fructose corn syrup and sucrose, which is a combination of fructose and glucose. In regards to processed foods, these really aren't real foods anyway. We need to teach them that. They're high in refined carbs, saturated fats, sodium, and chemicals, and they wreak havoc on our health. Processed foods are linked to insulin resistance, obesity, and liver inflammation. Processed foods are not satiating and can therefore lead to increased caloric intake. Encourage minimally processed foods whenever possible. We can teach them to shop the perimeter of the grocery store where they'll find produce, dairy, and lean proteins. And we can teach them to check for ingredients with long names that they can't pronounce on food labels, and also foods with many ingredients. So other practical tools and resources to support adherence could include portion control guides, so hand size or plate models for visual learners, meal planning apps such as PlayJoy, Paprika, Meal Prep Pro. Pinterest also has some free recipes that I use on a regular basis. Apps to help with tracking intake include MyFitnessPal, EatJoy, or PlateJoy. We could keep educational handouts in the office, so MASLD specific meal examples, Mediterranean diet handouts, and snack swaps. Referral to registered dietitians is always helpful if available. There is limited availability in our community, and insurance often, doesn't cover this service. But this is critically, registered dietitians are especially critical for those with comorbid conditions such as diabetes and chronic kidney disease. So basically, to kind of sum it up, some key takeaways: effective MASH management should go beyond weight loss. It should include sustainable, evidence-based dietary change, tailored, culturally sensitive counseling that reduces sugary beverages, limits processed foods, and leverages practical tools can transform liver and metabolic health outcomes. Personalization improves adherence. Patients are likely to sustain diets that align with their cultural beliefs and within their budget. So this ends my podcast, and I thank you for joining. Please visit the GHAPP MASLD Community Network for additional information on these topics. And you can also follow my profile for additional updates in the future. Thanks again for joining.